and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who, well, it's his turn now. I'm tired. Plus, there's the eye thing.
Nice, Tim Longo.
Yeah, I was a little stuck for. It's a game that doesn't have a lot of dialogue in it, so it's a little hard to come up with the intros that are relevant to Fez that we're playing. Also, I didn't play a ton this week because we had another plan that we were working on that kind of fell through at the last moment. So,
Well, you've played it before.
I have played it before, and like when we were talking pre-show about possible topics, I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, I can talk about that. So I'm not worried about that aspect of it. And I did play it quite in depth, so I'm ready to go. But we should definitely dive into your. I mean, you were working out your thoughts earlier today via text. And we should probably start on the platforming. It's really funny because I'm thinking of you playing Hollow Knight and then playing this, and I'm like, yeah, those things. This one of these tastes is not like the other, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are very different sorts of platforming experiences. So you want to talk a little bit about your feel for the platforming, and then I can maybe chime in with my own thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean it's specifically about the platforming, but also I guess I'd put it in the context of the game as a cohesive piece, or cohesive experience as well, because you would assume that the platforming that they have created is very intentional based on the kind of game that it is, and the puzzles and the world, and manipulation and the mechanics like platforming all should go together, which they clearly do. And I think it's obviously a very brilliantly cohesive game. But also, as I've said many times when it comes on the podcast before, when it comes to sort of like what my cup of tea is, and maybe why Hollow Knight resonated so much with me is that it was sort of like a perfect combination. And so I won't talk about Hollow Knight because that's not what we're here to talk about. But in this case, I don't know the history because I haven't seen the movie, and you've kind of described a little bit of sort of like, especially Phil Fish's perspective on things and some of his own sort of persona, I guess I'll say generously. And so I'm when I hear puzzle platformer, my head goes to Nintendo very quickly for not fair reasons. You know what I mean? Especially with the aesthetic and the inspiration. We talked about the inspiration last episode being three very clear inspirational games, with the exception of maybe the puzzles part, which isn't as much in those games. And so I think I was coming in with maybe wrong expectations and unfair expectations on sort of the mechanical side of the game. And on one hand, it's very impressive to have things like mantle. I mean, this Gomez is not many pixels, and they have a lot of great, pretty complex animations going on with him. And he can hit a ledge at waist height and still mantle up onto it. He can sidle around a corner. He can grab a ledge. A lot of things that Mario can't do, for better or for worse. And so I think that has caught me off guard in that it is, compared to something like Hollow Knight or Mario, it is not about even his ground friction when he lands is pretty loose,
Right,
and so
right.
it is very much a learned behavior, which, to your point when we were talking about this over text, it is definitely a what is your taste kind of thing, because there's age-old debates about what is good platforming and what is, but it really is a taste thing, because some games revel in the looseness of platforming and the fact that you have to really learn the physics of it to be good at it, etc. And some revel in the precision of it, of like, no, it's very predictable. It's going to do exactly this thing every time. So you can learn that and it becomes muscle memory. I'm just having a hard time finding my muscle memory so far for this platforming. And so luckily the death is nil. So
Yeah, no cost.
all the falling that I'm doing, which sometimes feels like, that's, I should have made that, and I'm not blaming the game for sure. I just don't think I've gotten a feel for it yet. But luckily it's not punishing, so I don't mind that much. Right. And I don't really think the platforming, like, I think technically you can call it a puzzle platformer, but I don't think they're hanging their fez on the platforming.
Wow.
See what I did there? Yeah.
I do, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think they are either. I mean, I will say um it's still precise in the sense like it's still repeatable. It's not like, well, it depends, but it is way more floaty, like a little big planet than it is like a Hollow Knight,
Yeah,
which is
Little
very,
Big Planet was the example I was going to
yeah,
bring up
yeah.
too, because it was a bit of a debate. There was a lot of debate about that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not overly fond of Little Big Planet's physics, because I think it wants more platformy challenges in a way that this doesn't. Like, this game is really a mental game
Yeah.
where you navigate the levels, through, some simple verbs, right? And one that's not super simple, which is the rotate, right? So I kind of like, you know, I mean, I'm not passionate about the platforming itself. It's more the ability to explore this world that has these crazy rules, and the fact that the platforming is very forgiving. I'm kind of like, okay, well, in the sense that if you fail, if you fall, you either die or you don't go that far. Like, it's got a height, from
Mm.
which you can't fall, and
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I can, and there's some ear steering, and like you said, you don't actually, like, if you jump up to a thing but you don't quite make it, that's okay, because if he hits it, middle of his body, he'll just kind of
Yeah.
hit and stick on and mantle up, so it's like, okay, it's pretty forgiving. It is a little floaty. It doesn't feel precise like a Mario, but I'm okay with that, and because the pleasure for me is really not about that aspect of the navigation. I do really like the rotation, but even the rotation is not it's not about the action of rotating. It's about the thought process of why I'm rotating.
Yeah.
So it's never
It's not a mechanical
physical,
skill.
it's
Yeah.
never a mechanical skill-based pleasure that I'm taking from the game. I mean, I've played platformers that have difficult parts in them, that have similar precedents, like Guacamelee, for example,
Oh
which is a
yeah. I need
great
to go back to that
Metroidvania.
game.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
I need
great
to,
Metroidvania.
I started the first one
I
and
wanna play
played
the
quite a bit.
sequel. I never got around to
I'm
the
gonna have to get on
sequel.
the Steam Deck.
Yeah, so it's so good. I loved
Yeah.
Guacamelee. That's another game that I think I got the platinum for, and found all the secrets. Didn't look up a single hint, just got marinated in that game when I played it. But it's got sections that are very precise, like,
Yeah.
and memory based, and like it is a skill
Oh
thing.
my
It's like,
god.
can
Hollow
you
Knight.
yeah, I mean, Hollow Knight, I'm sure is, yeah. I mean, I've played enough of Hollow Knight to know, like, I mean, I'm just getting to a point where it's difficult for me to finish things like that. Even playing 10 years ago now, Super Mario Galaxy, and getting all the coins in it, which was the only time I've ever done that with a Mario game, to be clear.
Mm, mm.
I went, and there's two, there's a level where the it's like pixel art of Mario. You have to get the 7 coins or whatever, 7 red coins. But whenever you step on or jump off of a one of the pixel starts disappearing. So you
Mm.
have to plot a course through this, to hit all these coins on this obstacle course that's like Mario, but you can't go back to anything you've stepped on before. And as you cross over things, they're going to disappear. So, like, just figuring out a path. I mean, I think I spent 2 solid days doing that, and then then the way you get the rest of the stars is you play the whole game again as Luigi. So I had to do it again, but the pixel art was Luigi this time, and it was a different path. So, and it was just so hard. That I'm like, I don't know if I have that in me anymore to do if it, in games. It's just like, I just don't know that I can spend that kind of time. I mean, I felt this way a little bit when I played, like Demon Souls. I think the first time I played that, before I kind of
Yeah, that's a
understood the games.
you
Yeah.
know what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's
I
like
know.
that's what has the irony is that us playing that Dark Souls um, has somehow like I don't know if it's rejuvenated because I don't really know if I ever was seeking this stuff out, even in the past, even in my youth. Um, for whatever reason, it's like I've found this. I don't know,
Yeah.
masochism or something, for this kind of stuff. I just and it is because of the high highs, they're
Yeah.
low
Oh, yeah.
lows, but it comes with the high highs. So
Yeah, 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 for sure. There's real pleasure in overcoming challenges like that. I'm just less and less able to
yeah,
either
yeah,
have the patience or just literally the physical skill to do them. So, it's a thing that I struggle with. I mean, I played something recently. I can't remember now what it was, where I had a moment like that where I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna have to be good. It was called Kina Bridge of Spirits, and that's sort of aspires to be Souls like. The bosses are very difficult, and it's very
mm,
much like learn the bosses, like learn what
yeah,
the boss does, and like get good at the things that you do. And it also just didn't feel quite responsive enough with some of, like, my understanding of the timing of things was like, wow, that takes longer than I want it to, so I have to like anticipate even more, if I'm, so it's like I have to pick up really early what's going to happen next and things like that. But I did it, I bowled through, and and I was generally, happy and enjoyed the game. And I did have moments where I was like, man, I did that. And then, but there are other times where I was like, yeah, but it took me 30 tries, and I just, like, it wasn't good enough. Like, the combat didn't feel like that rewarding. And, and so I'm kind of, I tend to be more like, yeah, I'm okay with a little sloppiness as long as it's forgiving. That's fine with me,
yeah,
as a player
yeah.
these days.
Well, yeah, and I think, and that's why I don't want to be too overly critical of it. I think, like I was trying to caveat, it was more of a wrong expectation coming in, which is always challenging for any game. Um, when you attempt, well, I don't even know if the studio did this, but the public, has classified this game as a puzzle platformer, and so I came in with certain, again, unfair expectations. But in their defense, the one thing I will say is that it feels ultimately it does what based on my taste or not, it feels appropriate for the game and appropriate for the character and the context and the world, because he is an unlikely hero in my mind, at least, right? He has been given the fez, he doesn't know what's going on. he's not like he's not like a plumber, for Christ's sake. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
he's not like a professional platformer. Or a bug that isn't really a bug. No spoilers, but yeah. So it fits still for me, and I think because of the nature of this game is really trying to do something else. Like, the platforming is almost like a means to an end anyway.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just an additional, like, secondary challenge to do what you're really doing, like you said earlier, and it is a puzzle game. I mean, it is just a very brilliantly crafted puzzle game that happens to have a character that's moving around in it, as the main. Because when you have basically a two-axis game, your challenges are going to end up being something in those realm, because you're always looking at a flat version of the world, and so you got to navigate that world. The irony is that I actually worked on a game in that our goals for the Tomb Raider reboot, because we added air steering, we added things to give
Oh, right, to give
player
her
more
yeah,
agency,
yeah.
but it was intentionally sloppy, and it was intentionally, there's a lot of like guidance that the engine gives the player to make it feel like they're doing good stuff, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
still
It
you're still
to
in
make you feel
control.
like you can move, but you're still gonna hit that
Yeah, it's
ledge
like
as long as you're heading
just
in the right direction. Yeah.
right, just out of reach, and then her hand just happens to grab it, right? But
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
still air steering, and you still, as opposed to the previous Tomb Raider games where they were predetermined. So we added all that in to make it feel more platformy. We actually used, platforming games as an inspiration. So it's not a platformer, but the irony is that, yeah, I mean, again, my point is, in that case, the goals I think were appropriate for what was trying to be done, and same here. Um, so I like Gomez a lot, and again, the animations and all the sort of like stuff that Mario doesn't do is really stellar. And there's times when I really love it because it has saved me because I've hit the ledge, at
Right.
the edge, and he luckily grabs it or whatever, which is like I'm not used to in a game like this. So yeah,
Yeah, I really enjoy that part of it, and it does kind of free me up to think, right? Which is, I think, the challenge I have with the more precise games is that I have to actually become pure animal, like, in a way, right? It becomes very difficult to think strategically or even just reflect on what I'm seeing. Like, I'm looking for very specific things in the environment. I'm mentioning that sort of Souls-like game, Kena, is, it's like I'm looking for specific, like a flash or whatever, all the tells, an animation thing, like, is he going to do this next or is he going to do this next? I know it could be either one, so I'm looking for those, and I've stopped actually seeing the world, in front of
oh
me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is
yeah.
very much like, no, because it's kind of easy going on the platforming. You can see the world. In fact, you can stop and rotate it at any moment, and he'll just stop moving, which I think also, because of the rhythms of platformers, the fact that you have to be able to pause him in the middle of any action to rotate the world means you can't, like, rely on precision, because the
Yeah.
player's not is going to be interrupting that precision and never really have a rhythm.
Yeah,
So
you need
it
some
it
forgiveness there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it supports it
Yeah.
in that way as
I
well.
was I mean, to your point, like, again, we're contrasting Hollow Knight maybe obviously a lot just because it is such a big good contrast, and it's also top of my mind. But there was, what was it? I was, well, I won't even say what boss, but I was playing a boss the other day, and it's the Souls like model, as you mentioned, and it is about repetition and muscle memory and mastery to get through some of these harder ones. And I had played it probably more than 30 times, and I'm just like over and over, and just I'm basically practicing, right?
Yeah.
And there was a point when I realized, there's always this point when I realize I'm almost not even watching the boss anymore. Like, when you first start a boss, you're you're trying to really like dissect and analyze what's happening so you can like find the patterns. But once you've played it and you're like getting into the rhythm of it, it's almost like through audio, through animation, through effects, like all the different packages come together, and it is sort of like the Matrix in a way, right? You're like, it's just become such muscle memory where like my eyes blur out almost, and I'm not actually focusing on the screen. I'm just like, like doing
Yeah.
this dance, and it's really an interesting feeling.
Yeah, it's like
um
dancing, but the dancers hit each other.
yeah, yeah, exactly, somebody's going to kill
That's
the other
that's
one.
a deep thought from Jack Handey. So
Oh, is it?
yeah,
Wow, that was a deep.
boxing is like dancing, except the dancers hit each other. So
That was a deep cut of a deep
deep,
thought.
deep cut thought. Yeah. So that's yeah. No, it is very much like that. You are trying to pick up even in your peripheral, because when you're staring at something to interpret it, to read it, it actually engage you can't engage your muscle memory because you put your brain in the way, so you actually have to disengage that part of
Right,
yourself.
right,
And I
right.
love that this game doesn't have that, because the pleasures are really meant to be, I mean it's fine, some of the platforming is fine, but it's like the pleasures are really meant to be the pleasure of figuring things out, which is a very
Hmm.
different sort of pleasure. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we haven't played a lot of puzzle games on the podcast, I feel like, but it is, the bread and butter of these games is to make the player feel smart, right?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
make them feel like, oh my, there's no way I could have ever solved that, and then you do. Probably talked about it with Mist a little bit, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, you don't want them to be impossible. You want people to finish. Though I will say, because I did look up the um the achievements, so I'm not looking anything up, but I did look those. I just looked at them in Steam. I mean, so
Yeah.
I just what was revealed, and apparently the quote unquote platinum that you got,
Yeah.
at least on Steam, 7%.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
That is low for a
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
That
yeah.
is very low. And in fact,
I'm
what
sure
was
it's
another
around the
one?
same. I'm sure it's around the same on the PlayStation. I wish I
Even
could look, but
I'm surprised to hear this, but I guess there's only 5 portals, teleporters or whatever. And even just finding all 5 of them was like 20%, 25%, which is also low.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, maybe this is a a pretty, I'm sure it scales, right? So you can probably not do, you can still feel fulfilled not finding all the
Yeah, I mean, this, as I was mentioning in pre-show, this is a game that has, yeah, sure, you can get 100%, but you can also get 209.4%, I think is the max. So there's a whole, like, after you finish the game, there's a whole nother game, worth of stuff, in a manner of speaking. And finding all of those secrets. I mean, and at that point you're looking at the map, you're like, okay, here's this one I haven't figured out yet. Here's this question mark on some world somewhere. Like, what am I missing there? Let me go back and look at it, see if I can figure things out. There are definitely moments where you're like, you finally figure something out and you're like, oh man, that makes it possible to figure out all these other things that I didn't even realize were there. Which is just an amazing, like,
Mhm.
things that you'll think are just, I don't know, like decoration or just not that important, just like, yeah, just kind of theming, turn out to actually have real meaning. And you're like, oh my god, what does that mean? And yeah, so it has that going for it too, which I think a good puzzle game generally does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, I mean, if I can segue,
yeah, absolutely.
that's a segue to one of the other topics that I wrote down in my notes was just, and I don't think we even have to spend too much time on it because I actually don't know what it means, what any of that means yet, mostly. But I do very clearly feel what you're just saying in that there are layers of mystery in the world that do feel intentional. Um, and even though they might look like, so now I've kind of become a little bit paranoid in that I'm trying to keep track of a lot because any of it really, it looks so intentional that any of it could be intentional.
Yeah,
Um, and like the example I gave in pre-show was like the color purple. A structure that has purple, that is purple colored, seems to have meaning of some kind. And I could be wrong, but it's like tend to be more ancient, and like kind of like more archaeologically, focused or something like that, for lack of a better term. And so I kind of like now I look for those.
hmm,
There could be a world or a level that has fairly seemingly modern elements in the context of the game at least, but then there's a purple door or a purple like section of it that's
yeah,
purple
element,
rock,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
like, oh, I wonder what that's about, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
sometimes they end up being secrets, sometimes they end up being a bomb door or something like that. So it's just really, you can tell the craft that was put into it, and the sort of like real attention to detail, at least from my only 16 cubes in kind of perspective. Yeah, so yeah, it's very admirable in that regards, and it gives me a lot of anxiety though too because I'm not typically good at these games, and so you know I'm always worried because I'm a completionist as well. I'm always worried that I'm missing something that I should. I don't. These games make me feel like I'm not smart. Um, and uh, and so I always feel like I'm missing something. Um,
Yeah,
but
I
we
mean,
we talked
it's a
about that.
it's a
There's a topic there too, is
yeah,
in that you don't always know in this game if you need to move on or not.
right, yeah, yeah. And there, it's a similar sort of, I guess what we're really talking about is sort of capability. You kind of come to games and you want to feel capable, and whether that's a physical challenge, a reading the systems challenge, a mix of the two, or just like the intellectual capability of picking out what's going on. I mean, I do think that this, one of the things that I think good puzzle games do, and my recollection is that this mostly does it. I think there's some puzzles that are very esoteric and like you know, eventually you might see it and go, oh my god, I can't believe how many times I've looked at it and not understood what it meant. I can remember one thing that happened very late in my original play of this game, whereas like, oh my god, that I've looked at that so many times, and not known that it was telling me something. And you know, maybe on the last episode because you might have already actually seen the thing I'm thinking of, that I didn't like. I just couldn't believe it, and I just was laid bare. I was just like, you know, sitting on the couch, like, I can't believe I didn't see that, you know, and I didn't recognize it for what it was. And in fact, I think in that particular case, I had almost cracked what that information was telling me it was telling me in such an easy way. Like, oh, if I had known that, I knew I would have everything I needed to know that I was trying to solve. I'm trying to not
Wow, you're really
describe it.
dancing around this
I'm
one.
really dancing around it because it's a great moment if you have it. But I had used other, you know, methods of cracking it. It's sort of like, I don't know if you've heard of Fermat's last theorem.
I've heard of it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway,
But not.
Fermat, this mathematician, wrote this equation in the liner notes, or in the, you know, margins of some book. You know, like, you know, I forget what it is. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to try to reproduce Fermat's at nearly 10 o'clock at night. I'm not at my best. But anyway, it's a very simple, elegant formulation, and he writes underneath it, neat proof, but not enough room for it here. And like, it went unsolved for, like, I don't know, a couple hundred years. And finally somebody did solve it, but at the end, like, of this extremely esoteric solution, they wrote, you know, and people agreed, like, this was clearly not Fermat's solution. You know, this was not his proof, because it used all these branches of, you know, mathematics that he didn't have access to, that didn't exist, you know, at the time of Fermat. And it's like, we've solved it and proved it to be true, but it's clearly not Fermat's solution. There's a much more elegant solution, and we still haven't found that to this day. I mean,
And so, however he came to it,
yeah,
is still kind of a mystery.
It's still a mystery, and it was sort of like that, as I was solving it in this other way.
Yeah, right.
And the solution was, you know, right there in front of me if I had just seen it, you know. And I was pretty near to a complete solution, I think. And you know, I'll maybe drop that in the last episode, and I'll put spoilers around it for people who haven't played Fez. But you know, just to say, hey, forward, you know, half a minute or a minute or whatever, to skip over this part. But it was a real, like, you know, a definite moment. I was just like, oh man, you know, and I felt humbled, honestly, you know, which is not a thing I normally feel, Tim. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the other part of, you know, that relates a little bit to the platforming conversation, because again, to me, it's not really about specifically the platforming. It's about the choices that designers make in a holistic way, right? Like, why was this the platforming that needed to be in this game? And we talked that through, and I think there are good reasons there. But as I've said many times, and I think, again, not to come back to Hollow Knight, but I think, you know, for me as a gamer, my sweet spot, which is just a taste thing, is when as many of those sort of core design aesthetics come together in a very cohesive way, and kind of complement each other kind of equally. And this one is obviously very dominated by the puzzle side, which is fine and good, and it's good for this game. But then by doing that, you end up sort of focusing in a certain area of player space, right?
Right.
And that's also fine. And every game picks its audience. And you know, shooter's the same thing. It's like, once you're a shooter, you have chosen you've chosen your audience, right, to some degree.
Yeah.
And you've alienated others, and that's okay. And so I think, because Hollow Knight checks so many of my boxes, and then does it in a very cohesive kind of equally balanced way, you know, because there's not puzzles in there, but there are kind of mysteries that you're like, huh, I wonder what this is, especially with the true ending. You're like, I wonder what this is all about, you know?
Right.
And I'm only now kind of getting into the middle of that. So there's, I love when those kind of, you know, I love it when the plan comes together kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For
Sure.
me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you came into Fez saying, you said a couple times, this is one of the greatest games ever made. And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that ratchets it up for me. And I think I'll put a qualifier on that for you,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
you know, which is relative for everybody. But it's really cool to come into a game to have you say that, and for me to say, oh, okay, wow, okay, so I need to pay attention
Yeah.
because this is something special, and it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel that way too about Hollow Knight, but also like if I were to make a list of all timers, Hollow Knight
Yeah,
wouldn't be on it for
no,
me
agreed.
because I can't do it. Right? The pogo in particular, I just like for whatever reason, I just cannot like
Well,
nail the
you
timing
know,
on that. Yeah,
yeah. The
but whatever.
pogoing is, yeah.
I mean, there was one like area I couldn't get across consistently, like to get to a new
Oh no,
spot.
I get it. You don't
Yeah,
have to. No, I
yeah,
understand.
yeah,
It is a punishment.
yeah. I just I
But
couldn't pull it
similar
off.
to your point about the revelation you had in Fez, there have been moments in you know the sort of milieu, I guess I'll say, of Hollow Knight for me, where I have my jaw has dropped, and
Yeah.
and just like some of the the moments in the other game I won't mention again that I had where I will never forget. You know, where I'm like the first time I got to this place, or the
Right.
first time I
Or
beat this
like, "Oh my
boss.
god, that connects to that?" Like, "Holy mackerel, like, and
Yeah,
that happened?
exactly.
That just
Yeah,
happened?" Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I got that far in Hollow Knight where there were things where I was like, "No way." You know, like, so I've definitely gotten that far, and I do wanna go back to that, you know, and maybe it will end up being on my list, and I'll just bully through, but I
But
just
those
need
are the yeah,
yeah, yeah.
those are the amazing moments for people
Those are
where
why they get to
they stick
be
with you. Yeah,
all-timers, you know? So,
yeah, yeah,
anyway, well, let's talk a little bit about the sort of design element, or design elements of the like the sort of escalation of rules. I think is how you put it in the pre-show of
yeah,
just
yeah,
like, you know, like, well, once this, therefore that, you know, and then we were talking about a proof earlier. It's very it's very kind of similar, in that you're exploring a space. It's like, well, I can do this. Well, that means I would be able to do this. Yeah, but you didn't think you'd also be able to do this, you know, and it's
yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
that piling things up. So what are, you know, are there, can you think of any like specific things where you're like, um, oh, I didn't expect, like, it wasn't obvious to me that that was going to fall out of this kind of decision, right? The that you can
Yeah.
rotate the world.
Well, the easy one, and again, I'm only 16 cubes in, so I just opened the 16 cube door, which apparently takes me to this village of people who are all speaking in that language, so I can't
Hmm.
understand them. So it's like that was a fun reveal. Really, really cool reveal because they do the whole spinning the whole world around to show you. So I'm not that far in, but these examples are pretty, I think, easy in this regard. And I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast a lot, and I think to some degree, for me at least, it's one of the cornerstones of the podcast. For me, is we're playing these classic games of really high quality, and there's reasons that they are considered classics. And oftentimes, for me, I love, especially because of my day job, seeing how somebody comes up with this kernel of an idea that is interesting and trying to do something specific, and then you take that one simple thing and you build upon it, right? To extend it into a full game, not just an idea for a prototype or something. Even I won't even say idea, but something on screen that's simple, and then you want to make it into a full game. How do you do that? While keeping the player's interest and surprising them and making the difficulty curve appropriate and all these sorts of things you want to do for a game to be like fully fleshed out. And so when I'm obviously thinking about it from their perspective, somebody had the idea of spinning the world. Okay, we're going to make a puzzle platformer where you can literally spin this two-dimensional world in 3 dimensions. And, we have our hook. Okay, so now I can see how I can jump and then spin the world and then land on a platform. Like there's these escalating elements where you're like, okay, simple concept, let's roll it out to them over time. And the reason I put this on my notes is that, okay, yes, you can spin the world, but what if you could spin things inside the spinning world? you know
Yeah.
and so they introduced this concept of rotating objects, and I think it does start like, well, the first ones that I found were these skulls, these like stone skulls, and you had to face them all the same direction, and then it opened a door. So they're okay, I get the concept of that. And then they introduce these pillars that you hold on to the bar, and then you can push them and then spin them around and then also spin the world. So you kind of got to do both. So now you have, like, I guess 8 perspective. I mean, I know it's multiplying more than that, but you have the 4 directions you can spin the world, but then you also have 4 directions you can spin these objects. And then they have one tower that has a door hidden inside of it, but it's nested. 2 different rooms are nested, and each of the rooms spins. The outside room and the inside room spin. So you have to spin them on different locations. So you have to spin one and then go up and spin the other. And then you got obviously have to line up both of them to get into the door, which you don't know there's a door there until you find it. But and you're spinning the world. So it's like these awesome, and then my favorite one is that right next, I think literally right next to that tower, or maybe in a adjacent world, there's this large screw basically with threads, and I get to it initially because I've done all this spinning in other ways. And then there's bars down there that he grabs onto, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to spin this, and I spin it, and nothing moves, and nothing's spinning. And I'm pushing, and I'm like, what's happening? Am I doing this wrong? I go to the other side, and I push, and I'm like, Gomez, spin this thing. What are you doing? And then I realize you have to hold the bar on the threaded screw, and you spin the world, so it doesn't spin because you're holding it. And it's like, mind blown. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, right, I'm not actually spinning this thing. And so then you corkscrew up, and it raises the platform because it's a thread. So I'm spinning as I raise myself up to a level that I can do the jump. So it's like these escalating mechanics, on this puzzle system that is the genesis of is just this simple concept of spinning the world. But then they're like, okay, now that we know we can do that, what else can we do?
Right. Yeah, it's like this chain of implication, right? It's like, well, this implies that. But if we added this element,
Right.
then that would imply, and you just kind of like add these implications up. And the genius of a good puzzle game is like presenting those in a series of ways that the player can encounter them. And again,
Yeah.
this is
It's key.
non-linear, right?
It's key.
Yeah, it's non-linear in that some things you're going to come back to. Like you can skip some things, I guess, because the economy is loose enough, like the platforming, that you can like proceed further without getting all the things, even if you have all the skills. When you start out, you just can't, haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, and so you can't get the one little cube bit or whatever in that one place, and it's
Right.
okay. There's others, right? And so you can get to your 16 or whatever. But the genius of a puzzle game is to present those implications in such a way that you're never at a point where the leap of logic is too far for you to make, and like that you can look at it, and it might take some fiddling, right? And you might have to experiment and all of that, like you were doing with the screw, like, that's really weird, why won't he just hold it or whatever, or just push it, and then making that next step is like, you've now learned something inherent about the world that you didn't understand before, this world, and that's
Yeah.
really a great moment, and I remember that screw when you were describing it in pre-show. I was like, oh, I remember figuring that out. I remember the moment of like, oh wow, if I hold it, it's not going to move because I'm not really moving, and therefore it's going to go up this thread, this threaded screw. That's amazing. I can totally
Yeah.
remember that, and that one stands out. And I'm sure there's going to be others, because I don't remember lots of particulars, but as soon as I see things, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. This was super cool, or whatever. So I'm sure I'll have a lot more of that to come as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ladder thing, I really liked the ladders where there's like I think 4 ladders on top of another, and they were mechanically, whatever, by some machine in the world.
Yeah, it's the
They were
lighthouse, I
counter
think.
rotating. Yeah, it was the lighthouse, which is a section I like generally. It's just picturesque and everything. But the so like sections 1 and 3 were rotating if you look down from the top clockwise, and 2 and 4 were rotating counterclockwise, but they'd line up every other rotation, right? Because I think there were ladders on both sides. So you'd be climbing up the ladder and the world would spin, and now there'd be a ladder you could continue onto, and then the world would spin again, and now there wouldn't. So you were like timing the movement. And and it wasn't difficult. It wasn't that it was difficult. It was just neat, and
Yeah.
again, it kind of taught you something about how to think about the world and like what you might need to do when you encounter, machinery or whatever, things that were automated that you were not doing in the world as well. So, and I
Right.
think that stuff is super, yeah, it's just are just great moments of like, oh, I didn't think about that as a thing I'd be able to do in this game, like because I was thinking platformer, or whatever, and the movement that it allows is just super cool. I think in a lot of cases. So,
Yeah,
um,
another one I just thought of is there's that's to your point on automation. There's um suspended in thin air rotating platforms that I've seen recently that when you land on them, they spin the world for you.
mm,
So, you have to it adds in timing elements, I guess, right? Because
right,
they're spinning on a rhythm. And so if you jump at the wrong time, the thing you're jumping to may not be there, right? Because it's spun the way you would normally control it, but now they've taken control away from you. So it adds in some of that Mario timing of platforming, right? So it's interesting, having a platform in Mario move back and forth on a two-dimensional, in a two-dimensional way, and you have to time when to jump on it, or Megaman or something, right? Like we all get that. But how would you do that in a game where the world spins? It's like, oh, well, you make the platform stays in place and it is spinning the world. But by doing that, it's moving the things around it relative to
yeah, yeah,
Gomez. So the thing you're jumping to, actually, the timing element comes into, oh, that thing might be behind you because it just spun, on a clock. So it's like it's taking these conceits from traditional platformers and turning them on their literally turning them on its head. And it's a simple concept, but again, I just love, and I think every great game will have this sense of um, balanced sort of escalation where it doesn't feel unfair, but you're like you said earlier, you're doling this stuff out at a pace that makes the player feel like you're learning more, overcoming more, um, and yeah, being smart and being clever and like overcoming these challenges. And so far, at least, with the exception of the times when I know there's stuff left in an area that I haven't found, and I'm not sure if I have the tools I need to find it. That's pretty frustrating.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. See, that's my anxieties. I don't know if it's just me not being smart or if I actually don't have a tool.
Yeah, and
Um,
honestly, I can't remember. Like, my thinking is that there are cases in which there's information that you don't know yet, and because you don't know it, um, it, it's probably theoretically possible to do, what's there, but it's just like that's not the point. Like the point is to occasionally have new lenses on which you can view the game. I mean, the point is really at sometimes to get an aha moment of like, oh, that thing I couldn't figure out a couple levels back that I left. I know what to do now.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
no, it's valuable. That you don't want to throw that away. I definitely don't want to. I don't
yeah.
want them to overtell me,
It's
but
a hard like
yeah,
it's hard to know where to draw that line and like how much of that to have, and like, and I just wouldn't be anxious about it. It's like, I mean, if you get to the point where you're like, well, I don't have enough cubes to do whatever, I can't move forward then that's the point where you have to like, okay, well, let me re-examine some of the places I've been, and
Yeah,
you
and
know,
that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, it's the it's the backtracking of that when you're yeah, it's we talked about it with the various Resident Evils. I don't know if it would have been worse if they would have given you an indication of that or not. I guess, like you said, it diminishes the revelation part of it. Um, if it was easier to navigate the world, they do have fast travel in some cases, but it's sort of a backtracking of like, oh shoot, that one over there on the map is white and it's pretty far away.
yeah,
And I don't know if I have what I need, so I don't know. It's definitely a hard problem. It's a hard problem, but I mean, the reason one of the reasons I looked at the achievements wasn't to spoil anything. I did a little bit of spoiler by looking at them, not too much, but it was to see the percentages. And we talk about wall missions all the time. It's like if you have some, if I do hit a wall, which I likely will, um, and there's a bunch of white, spaces on the map. Those are the times when I usually put puzzle games down, right? Because it's
yeah.
like, oh man, I
I
have
know I
probably,
have myself, for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Um,
but to your point, if you soldier on and let it stew, usually with puzzle games, for me at least, like if I simmer, something will come to me. So
yeah, and I have put down puzzle games. There are some like I never
I don't
finished.
believe it.
I've never finished The Witness or Braid. Um,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
because I
Well,
will.
so you didn't see the ending of Braid. Well,
No,
good for
I've
you.
seen it because
Yeah.
I went to a talk he gave, but and talked all the way through it, and I was like, oh, huh. Um, and with The Witness, I mean, The Witness is much bigger, so it was more just kind of exhaustion at a certain point. Like there's something I don't find. That one's almost purely like buying a book of Sudoku puzzles or something like that. And you just like sit down and it's like, well, I'm just going to do some of these, every day. And you have 500 of them. And after you've done 200, you're like, I kind of want to break from Sudoku now, and you never
Yeah.
go back. And that's kind of what happened there for me more than anything. It wasn't that I was, although there were some puzzles that were extremely difficult. It was more that I was like, I'm just not enjoying the play of this anymore, and the intellectual aspect is too, it's too just like I look at this pattern and solve the pattern, and I figured out, and I just keep going, I figure out things. I liked when it was more world inflected, but there are points where it was like, here's a big complicated puzzle
Hmm.
that I know all the pieces of, but working out the logic of it, it's just going to take me a while, and I don't feel like I'm going to get much out of it anymore. um and I'm trying to think of other ones I haven't finished. The Talos Principle was another one, where you're like, it's like sort of like laser maze type puzzles. Some of them anyway. I don't, not all of them probably, and I don't remember the game very well. But it was a similar thing where I only played a little bit. That one actually made me a little motion sick as well, and actually, The Witness did before they
Mm.
added some.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Some
Yeah.
field of view or and a pointer, a pip, a reticle. Because I'm very prone to motion sickness in games. And it's like it's the worst thing especially one on a TV. That's pretty rare for me to sit on the TV and feel it. So I was like, oh man, that's not good when I'm feeling it from that. And who knows why, I think it's when the worlds are really stark like that, that makes it accentuated. So
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, so those are a few I know I've never finished. But
Well,
then, like, I played all of the MYST games I could get to run, as well as Abduction, and I can't remember if there was another one, but I played all of those and like, no hints, muscled my way through all of them and loved them. They weren't very deep in terms of puzzles, but the world was really cool to move around in, and like making the connections and like uncovering the stories and like
yeah, yeah.
understanding what happened. I love that stuff.
They're special. Yeah,
Yeah,
those are really special, unique kinds of puzzle. Yeah.
yeah, and they
Um,
harken back to text adventures for me as well,
right,
even
right,
though
right.
the sort of style of of what you're doing is very different, right? I mean, in text adventures, there can be wordplay, there can be, you know, but there's also often just sort of the logical connections, that I really appreciate, and that's why, since that's where I started, it's also a big part of what I, have always enjoyed in games. So
We played Abduction as a bonus episode, didn't we? Because I feel like I
I think we
remember.
did, yeah, but I
Yeah.
played it all the way through.
Yeah, yeah, but I remember liking it.
Yeah,
Now that you mention
cool.
it, I have
Yeah,
fond memories of it. I don't think I finished it, but yeah, I should
yeah.
maybe
I
go back to that sometime.
hope Cyan Worlds manages to survive.
Yeah, they're
They're
going
having,
through some stuff.
yeah, like everybody.
Yeah, I think there's an important. We don't have to talk about it now or long or really ever, but I think there's to your point on the difficulty and sort of even for you putting down some puzzle games or any genre. I think that's actually an important topic for this series. And maybe we talked about it last episode when we kicked it off, but I think that the interesting thing about the indie game space is, as opposed to, I guess the opposite of that is, I'll just say generally, is that um, when you have more cooks in the kitchen in like a publishing model or something, they're you're not spending your own money or whatever it is, right? Or they have their own goals, and so that goes through sort of an being generous. I'll call it an editorial sort of process, right? Where it's like they're going to make something that they want to be achieving certain metrics. The fancy pants would say KPIs.
Oh yeah,
Um, um, and so, but in an indie game space, I would assume there's freedom to, if you want to make a game very specifically for a very specific audience who loves Sudoku and wants to play 500 Sudokus in a row that get very, very difficult, that is up to you. You can
yeah,
do
yeah,
that. There isn't a CFO someplace or some marketing department who is trying to figure out how to sell this game, blah, 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 blah. There's hundreds, thousands of reasons. But I think that huge fork in the road, even, even Fez is an unorthodox kind of game, very good. But, you know, I don't mean to be coming back to the percentage of completion from the achievement, but I think it is a good example of like, it's okay. This is what they wanted to make. Nobody was telling them what to do. They did what they wanted to do, and so 7% finished the game. That's okay. That is what this is all about. Versus like those metrics are very scrutinized on a AAA game of like,
right,
you
yeah,
know you need people to get to a certain whatever. That's
yeah. So
it's
for
nonsense.
folks who don't know, KPI, key performance indicator, for those who not, because sometimes Tim just drops this stuff in here.
I'm sorry,
It's
and
all right. No, I get
I
it.
hate that term too, but yeah,
Uh,
key
Key
performance.
performance indicator. But yeah, I mean, it's very common, especially with service games, to like be tracking your key performance indicators, and picking them is really important. Um, but yeah, it's also just like it. A game like this, because it is only a couple of people, a handful of people, the budget is small. They can actually, in some respects, find their audience. Like if you're making the world's best Sudoku game, like you can go out and find the Sudoku forums, and like
Mhm.
find your tribe, and as long as you can reasonably estimate the size of that tribe, then you'll probably do okay. Now, I think Fez did a lot better than okay, in large part because of the movie, right? And sort of, it was very well, and it's of course very, very good, right? But those two things, I think, collided, and I think the same was true also of Braid and Super Meat Boy, the other two games featured in the film.
Right, right. Well, yeah, and I think 7% says that a lot of people bought it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right? And it's okay. I'm not saying people need to finish games. Lord knows I don't. But it's to your point, finding your audience is a different proposition in an indie space, and it's a lot more in the developer's hands, where you can succeed but also fail, right?
yeah,
Completely on your own.
yeah, yeah.
In the AAA space, you have a more of a security net there, right? To help.
Well, in theory.
In theory, the idea is to try to use as much as you can to de-risk things, right? By
Yeah,
making something, that will at least make its money back. But it doesn't always happen, for sure. So
yeah,
yeah, it's just a big fork in the road there that we just don't talk a lot about. We've talked a lot about games that were in a pretty traditional approach, and they go through a process oftentimes. Unlike, except for like the stories we got for like Fallout, for instance, right? That was like sort
yeah,
of this like side thing,
yeah, yeah.
or XCOM, right? That was like shouldn't have come out.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
I
what
mean,
I'm talking
and I
about.
think the further we go back too, the less people kinda knew, right? There
Yeah,
weren't channels to know, right? There was no internet to there if you weren't getting, seeing mail in, Nintendo Power or whatever, you didn't know, what problems people had. So, and the markets, of course, were smaller as well, right? So there was also it could be a smaller, more cohesive team. We've talked about all that's well covered ground by us at this point. But it's so in a way it's a fork in the road, but in another way it's kind of a return to
yeah, right.
basic principles where it's just that the overall market is much larger. Therefore, having a very small piece of it, is something you can live on,
Yep.
and in some cases get rich on, depending on the success of your game. So, and I think these three games, achieve that kind of level. I don't know too much. I mean, just because they were fairly low cost and sold pretty wildly, for those kind of expectations. So it's they really worked out well. Let's put a pin in it there because I want to get to an email that I think we're going to have to read twice. Once maybe for each of us. I'm gonna have to take some notes here as we do it. This was of course sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Could you read this email, and I'm gonna need you to call out choices you make as we go. Go ahead and get started. We'll see how it goes.
Jeez. Talk about a puzzle.
Yep.
Even our email is a game. Thank
Yep.
you, one mystery dip.
Yep.
Subject: choose your own email. Where did he come up with this? Jokester. By the way, as an aside, for anyone who is a plug for the Discord, you'll plug it later. We had a sort of accidental, like just a few of us getting into the voice channel, and then we just more streamed his Minecraft that way because we didn't get to stream last week.
Oh, right
I
on.
want to try to do more of that. It was just fun to just do like a Discord only, small stream, just jumping on and chatting. So mystery came in is why it made me think of it.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
Yeah,
said
he
hello.
also I think that this email actually came out of a discussion in one of the channels in there as well. I think that's where the sort of germ of this idea came from, although its particular presentation is is its own thing. But enough preamble about the email.
Okay, so I'm not sure how to read this, but it said number one, warning to readers: do not read this email straight through from beginning to end. These paragraphs contain many different questions you can think on. From time to time, as you read along, you will be asked to make a choice. Your choice may lead to success or disaster. The paragraphs you read are a result of your choice. After you make your choice, follow the instructions to see what you're asked next. Remember, you cannot go back. Think carefully before you make a move. One mistake can be your last. ... For full disclosure, I was one of those kids that read the whole Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Yeah,
straight through. Because I didn't want to go by the rules. Okay, so it already says turn to paragraph 7. Okay. Hey, Brett and Tim. This is paragraph 7. That's what it said to do. There were some conversations on the Discord a few weeks ago about games with choices and how meaningful they can be, especially with a series of games. I had a few questions and thought it would be put them in a choose your own adventure format. Did you, Mystery Dip? You thought it would be fun. Turn to paragraph 5. Okay, I'm going.
All right,
up,
so
back up.
here's going to be your first branch point. So
Okay, do you think if given the chance, players would rather have a story that is unique to them or one that is a similar experience across playthroughs, which they can use to relate to other players?
So yeah, you have to answer this question, Tim.
Okay, unique. Turn to page paragraph 9. Same. Oh my gosh! Or you sighed before answering? I just sighed. I just sighed. Did you hear it?
I
Oh
did,
my!
yeah.
He knew.
He knows you, yeah.
He knows. Oh man, mystery. This is meta. I'm gonna go with unique. Turn to paragraph.
Okay, despite
9.
the fact that you sighed, I guess you'll go to 9. Okay.
Oh, I see. I see. Or you sighed before answering. Same. Okay. I see what he meant there. No, I'm sticking with my choice.
Okay.
9. It seems like systemic procedural content would be an answer to the amount of dev work permutations create, but when endless stories can be generated, do they lose their value? No. Turn to page 15 or paragraph 15. Okay. With increased buzz around crap. Oh no, what have I done? With increased buzz around AI content generation, specifically storytelling, do you think, if it reaches a certain ability level, players will enjoy playing a dynamic story with no human involvement, or would the game feel hollow? A hollow. Turn to paragraph 3. See, I'm even turning this into a choose your own adventure book. How do you feel about the illusion of this is 3? How do you feel about the illusion of choice as a dev and a player when presented with multiple options that lead to the same conclusion? Boss fight where the character dies anyway. Oh, I don't like them. Turn to paragraph 10. The pressure's mounting. 10. Thanks for taking the time to answer some questions. I wish I knew how you handled the other ones you didn't get to, but I guess we'll never know. Read the PS, turn to paragraph 4. Had enough, turn to paragraph 12. I've had enough, mystery. Regards, Mystery Dip. Email over. Oh my God, that's one of the best emails we've ever had.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Well, now I have to do it.
Yes, you do it. Okay,
yeah, I have to maybe branch differently. Okay, 1 is the warning, so I'm going to skip over that because there's no there's nothing new to be gained there. Same with 7. 5 it goes to 5, but it's hey Brett and Tim, there were some conversations, etc. Choose your own adventure. Go to paragraph 5. Do you think, if given the chance, players would rather have a story that is unique to them or one that is a similar experience across playthroughs which they can use to relate to other players? So my thinking on this is, unless you're going to play it again, what difference does it make? So I'm kind of in a I don't know. I almost like
people will talk about unique as well.
I realize, but I also think that, like, for me, I actually prefer an authored story most of the time because it feels better. So in general, I'm just gonna branch here. I'm gonna go to 11.
Yeah, fair. Do it.
You know, in part just to have the different experience. What happens when a successful game with hard choices gets a sequel? Uh, I should caveat or clarify at this point that the discussion was around the Mass Effect series.
Yeah, I bet.
Which I had said something like, well, I played Mass Effect 3. I don't remember too much about it, except I got the good ending, which, you know, if you remember there's a whole thing about the ending of Mass Effect 3. In fact, it is to date, I think, the only certainly mass market game that has been patched to change the ending because players were so up in arms. Anyway, is there a way to allow such meaningful choices, gain, lose a character or a location, from the first game to carry over without exponential spread of story permutations? I'm going to say yes, it is possible. It's just difficult. Is there a way to keep optional DLC expansion content meaningful when not everyone will purchase it? Yes, of course. Yes. Yes. And now we go to, I think we go, yeah. So I
Not
said
only
yes to
that, but you probably want it to be so more people purchase it.
well, yeah, true. But yes, I do. And actually, what I would say about this, and I would say about any of these, sort of narrative, like, well, does it matter this or if you have choices and if they're meaningful? I would say just making the choice, even if the same result occurs, is meaningful because you still had the experience of making a choice. Like that's the experience, right? So if you pick, for example, I'm about to hit a choice. I'm replaying the first, Wolfenstein reboot game, and there's a choice early in the game where you can either pick one character or the other who's gonna basically get killed by the Nazis immediately in front of you, grotesquely, and it kind of doesn't matter because the mission's about to end and some big story thing is going to happen. It really doesn't matter. There is a mechanical difference in how the game plays, but it really doesn't matter to the story, let's say. And what choice you make there is still a choice you made for a reason. Like, and the fact that you made that choice is an experience that you had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always feel like even if a choice has no quote unquote objective, impact, it still has a subjective impact. And I don't play games for objective impact. I play them because of what they do for me. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
now we're at 10, which is thanks for taking the time to answer some questions. I wish I knew how you handled the other ones you didn't get to, but I guess we'll never know. And then I will read the PS since he had enough. And I skipped a little faster over mine.
Oh my God. Some of the ones we didn't hit though are, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're all reachable. P.S. This option is to be filled in by the PS DLC, which I'll no doubt be sending as a follow-up email later.
Wow.
And then he says, turn to paragraph 12, regards, mystery dip, email over.
I
I
hope
will
that
say there
wasn't.
was a separate PS email that came later in the week which
Oh,
said, P.S. This is the PS DLC. Do you think it's better for a game to be a self contained narrative or swing for the fences, he puts in quotes, making an epic, expecting sequels or expansions to come? What if they don't come?
oh.
I don't know. As you're a guy who has routinely set up a sequel that never came. What are your thoughts on this, sir?
I hate to say that depends, but it does depend.
Mm.
Yeah. There are times when I think you just gotta go for it because it's the sort of self-fulfilling prophecy problem, right? Or maybe not a problem. When you think there might be the ability, and then it's a bummer, obviously, for the audience when it doesn't happen. But then there are times when you're like, you know what? I don't know. Let's just make sure that this is good and not worry about the future. So yeah, it does depend for me. It's a lot of variables.
I am, and I take this more from other media than I take it from games because in games I kind of really don't care, honestly. But I've just rewatched all of Twin Peaks, and that is two series that ends on basically an unresolved question. I mean, I guess the second, the like when it ended the first time, we did not think we were ever getting any more Twin Peaks, and so it was in a sense never resolved, not to ever be resolved, and for 25 years it wasn't. And I was fine with it. I loved how it ended, despite the fact that it opened up a whole Pandora's box of additional questions and like what would happen next kind of things. And I was great. I don't mind an unresolved ending. So I guess I would tend to lean towards unresolved is fine, and if you get a chance to work with it again in the future, like we're still all waiting for Half-Life 3 or whatever.
Yeah, I think if
And
it's
then
fulfilling to you.
the series ended again with the return, and also opened up a whole Pandora's box of
Yeah.
additional questions in that final episode, which I just watched last night. So it's very very much on my mind of just like, oh my god, and I love it. I love that stuff. And I don't mind that I'm never gonna get answers. I can sit with that, like not knowing. There's a moment I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's Adam Driver and Ben Stiller. And the whole thing is about how they're very different sorts of people because of their generations. And Ben Stiller's a documentary filmmaker, and Adam Driver's like an up and coming one, and their wives are there. And there's a point at which they're trying to remember something, and Ben Stiller goes to look it up on his phone, and Adam Driver says, "No, let's just not know." And it's a great moment in a movie, like, because Ben Stiller's like, "Wow, that's really profound." In this day and age,
That sounds like that. It's perfect. Yeah.
I think it's called While We're Young.
I've heard that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think it's Noah Baumbach, maybe. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
As a quick aside, though, I will say that I'm looking at the original email. Passage 14 and 6 are inaccessible.
I have a flowchart email that followed because he had to make his own flowchart so he could make sure things connected back. So he sent me. I congratulated him via Discord private message on his email, and anyway,
the PS DLC is brilliant.
Yeah, of course. Well, there's always a PS with Mystery Dip. So I like that you didn't want it, and I was like, well, I'll read it, and then I had to go download the DLC, which luckily I had. Okay, well, let's that was of course sent to Dev Game Club. Thanks very much, Mystery Dip, for the entertainment, to devgameclub@gmail.com. Also in the Google system, how's that for a segue? And this is the last time I'm going to say it because I don't know why I'm saying it. We recently added ourselves to YouTube. You should be able to get all the shows there. I should probably check and make sure these new shows have been going there, but I know a few people, three at last check, have subscribed there. I guess, if you mostly get your podcast via YouTube, you wouldn't know that we're on YouTube. So I'm not sure who I'm talking to, but congrats. It's there now. We also left, organically. Yeah, we're organically served up to somebody. We'd also love to have your reviews. I check the iOS, infrastructure and all that, but anywhere you use them, we think we're a 5-star podcast, and we hope that you think the same. You find us on the web at devgameclub.com, or you can find my co-host twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
And I gather I need to re-add.
That reminds me.
Yeah, the Minecraft.
We have some stuff to do.
Yeah, I gotta arrange that tomorrow. I mean, I'll just re-add you, and we'll figure out the rest of it later. I know they want me to turn on various add-ons and things, but remind me tomorrow at work. I will.
Yeah,
because I have to download it because the laptop that I had Minecraft on has died, and I haven't taken it to be serviced yet. Anyway, we're also on the Discord. That is a fan-run Discord, and there is a link in the show notes. It's a good time, as you can hear. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, which you can find through that Discord, are all by Mark Garcia. Have fun tilting at windmills, or even just tilting windmills this week, and good night.
Good night.